Hey, what's going on everybody? Max from the Horror Court here, and welcome to the new video. So if you haven't seen Zach's review on Nightmare on Elm Street, click the screen right now to watch it. I can wait. Okay, so now that you guys have watched his review, I would like to let you guys know that we are going to be doing series reviews of Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. As you can tell by the title, I am doing Friday the 13th. So yeah, let's get started. Friday the 13th, Part 1. Alright, so prepare for a mini rant. Alright, you ready? Okay. So I don't know about you, but most of the time in movie series, the first movie is usually the best movie. Examples being Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre in their series, for sure. So with that being said, will I say the same thing about Friday the 13th? Well, let's just find out. So the movie begins at Camp Crystal Lake, all the way back in 1958, where a group of camp counselors are singing some weird-ass songs. We are then greeted by a POV shot. Not that kind of POV shot, you fucking perverts. The cool and creepy kind that involves staring at sleeping teenagers and following some teens into a barn and stopping them from losing their virginity via death. After the prologue, we are introduced to the title scene, which I have to say is pretty cool with the glass shattering effect. 21 years later, we are then greeted by what looks to be the movie's protagonist, Annie, who is trying to find her way to Camp Crystal Lake. After finding someone to help her, some asshole named Crazy Ralph shows up and tries to scare her with a blood curse, whatever the fuck that means. I always love that crazy look Ralph gives him as he hops on his bike and rides away. He's such a great character. So after a car ride that includes quite an awkward conversation, she then arrives at Camp Crystal Lake? Camp Crystal Lake is a cemetery? Why didn't anybody tell me this before? Anyway, we cut to Kevin Bacon and two other people no one cares about arriving at Camp Crystal Lake, which in fact turns out not to be a cemetery, but a place where a middle-aged man cuts wood without a shirt on. How tasty. We then cut back to Annie, who is seen getting into a Jeep, but we do not see the driver. How spooky. After a one-sided conversation, Annie says, "Fuck this, I'm out," and flees into the woods. But don't worry, the mysterious person chases her into the woods and slits that hoe's throat. Not bad for the first official kill of the series. Meanwhile, back at camp, the kids are just doing what they do around the camp when suddenly, a wild Ekans appears. No worries though, Ned is a badass and chops that thing in half. Kinda unnecessary, but whatever. I guess he was just trying to impress some of the ladies. A little later, we get another visit from Crazy Ralph. How fun! Ned spots the mysterious figure going into a cabin, and he stupidly follows. Spoiler, his death is off screen, sadly. Kevin Bacon and his girlfriend Marcy enter a cabin and commence to fucking like rabbits. Afterwards, KB's GF goes into the bathroom for some reason, and we are treated to one of the series' finest kills of one of the series' finest actors. Only the best for Kevin Bacon, am I right? Okay, I have a few questions about this crazy kill. First off, how thin are those damn mattresses in those cabins? How is it possible for someone to stab a spear all the way through those and still puncture somebody's neck? It just makes no sense. Secondly, how do they not see or hear the killer? They must have been doing some hardcore shit. And lastly, if you look, you can see the killer's hand on his forehead as the killer is driving the spear into his neck. How is that fucking physically possible? There are so many fucked up things with this kill, but I seriously give Tom Savini huge credit because it is certainly one of the finest kills in the series. So after her boyfriend gets his neck somehow fucked up by a spear, Marcy hears a noise in the showers. Once again, this is a slasher movie, so she assumes Kevin Bacon is messing with her and stupidly investigates. This leads to her getting an axe to her face. The kills in this movie are fucking awesome. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Bill, Alice, and Brenda are playing Strip Monopoly? What the fuck even is that? I don't even know. The heavy rainfall lures Brenda to her cabin as she thinks she left her cabin windows open. As she is getting ready for bed, she is slowly lured to the archery range and is blinded by the lights and sadly killed off screen. Hearing her scream, Bill and Alice go to investigate, Mr. Ink style, and head to Kevin Bacon's cabin, but they only find the bloody axe that was used to kill his girlfriend. After looking around, they come to the conclusion that something is up, if the bloody fucking axe in the absence of all their friends wasn't a big enough clue. Of course, when they try and phone for help or drive away, surprise surprise, the phone lines are cut and their cars won't start. Isn't that a damn shame? Meanwhile, Lumberjack Steve arrives back at the camp. Unfortunately, he is killed, but he says that he knows who the killer was. So that's something, right? I'm gonna miss him chopping all that wood without his shirt on. Oh, gets me every time. Let's go out of the camp, and Bill and Alice seem to be in some real deep shit. For some ass reason, Bill decides to go alone to check the power. This surely can't end well. Surely enough, after Alice makes some coffee, she goes out to look for Bill and finds him pinned up on a doorway. I'm not sure how the killer did that, to be honest. I guess the killer is like Ronda Rousey or something. Alice flees to her cabin, and moments later, Brenda's body is hurled through the fucking window. If you weren't sure that the killer was a bodybuilder before, then you should be now. Alice hears a car outside, and thinking of Steve, she goes outside and is confronted by some random old woman. So if you haven't seen this movie before, you might be thinking, is this chick the killer? No way. It had to have been the son that drowned or something, right? Well, you were wrong. After a bit of rambling about her son, she reveals that she is the infamous Friday the 13th Camp Blood Crystal Lake killer. Then the old woman begins to attack Alice. For her being as strong as she was earlier in the movie, it's kind of pathetic how she goes about trying to kill Alice. In a pretty climatic chase, Mrs. Voorhees corners her in a shed where you think surely the killer who had swiftly taken out all of these teenagers will be able to dispose of this random girl. But nope, Alice escapes. She runs to the main cabin and hides in the pantry. However, Mrs. Voorhees, aka Johnny on the Spot, greets her with a machete. Unfortunately for Mrs. Voorhees, she is walloped in the head with a pan and knocked unconscious. Thinking Mrs. Voorhees is dead, Alice sits down next to some water for some reason. But straight out of nowhere, Mrs. Voorhees is back and ambushes her with a machete. After a bit of a struggle, Alice manages to grab the machete and decapitates Mrs. Voorhees. So now that Mrs. Voorhees is dead, you may be thinking, the movie is over, right? Right? Well, not quite. Alice falls asleep in a canoe, which still doesn't make much sense to me. But anyway, she is then awoken by the police who arrive at Camp Crystal Lake. When suddenly, little kid Jason jumps out of nowhere and pulls her under the water. It's definitely one of the greatest scenes in horror film history. Alice later wakes up in a hospital. She asks the police if they found Jason in the lake. Shockingly, the cop says no, and the movie ends with this line.
Then he's still there.
So yes, everybody, that is Friday the 13th for you. Is it a good movie, or is it a bad movie? Well, depending on how you look at it, from a standpoint of the series as a whole, I'd say it probably is not the best movie in the series. With that being said, it is still a great entry in the horror genre. It has great kills, even though quite a few of them are off-screen, unfortunately. And the film also creates such a suspenseful atmosphere with the POV shots and the thought of not knowing who the killer is, and that's what definitely makes it a must-watch for all horror fans. All in all, I give this movie a solid A-. It's got the suspense, gore, and entertainment value that is what makes Friday the 13th parts 1 through 4 so great. The only thing holding it back from being as good as the original Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the staple himself, being Jason. Either way, it's still a great movie. Anyway guys, that'll do it for me. Stay tuned for newer videos from me and Zach, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.
You're an American original.
I'm an American original.